2016-17 Kashmir unrest timeline of unrest. 2016 July. After the news of Burhan's death spread, protests erupted in some areas of Kashmir Valley. Curfew-like restrictions were imposed in some places in South Kashmir during the night, and internet services in many areas were suspended. Hurriyat Chairman Syed Ali Shah Gilani and Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front Chairman Yashin Malik called for a strike to protest against the killing of Wani. Gilani, along with other separatist leaders including Asiya Andrabi and Mirwais Umar Farooq, called for a three-day shutdown in Kashmir to protest against the killing. The shutdown was repeatedly extended into August by the end of the month. Violent clashes broke out in response to Burhan's killing on 9 July in some areas. Over 20 police stations were attacked by mobs who stole weapons from the stations and fired upon the security forces. Stone pelting was reported from many parts of Kashmir, including transit camps of Kashmiri Pandits. Train services and the pilgrimage to Amarnath Temple were suspended. All state board exams were postponed, while the Srinagar-Jammu National Highway was shut to traffic. By the end of the day, over 200 people were injured and 11 protesters were killed. By 10 July, more than 20 were confirmed to have died during the unrest. More than 300 CRPF personnel were reported to have been injured. In addition, many vehicles and buildings belonging to security forces were attacked during the day, with a number of them being set ablaze. Some suspected militants hiding among protesters also threw grenades at the security personnel. 2 policemen also died in July during the unrest. One of them died on 9 July when a mob attacked and pushed his mobile bunker into the waters of Jhelum River. Another died on 24 July, having succumbed to the injuries he received in an attack on a police station by stone pelters on 15 July. On the night of 12 July, about 200 to 300 Kashmiri Pandit employees fled the transit camps in Kashmir due to the constant attacks by protesters. Over 1,300 government employees belonging to the community fled the region during the unrest. 800 personnel of the Central Reserve Police Force, CRPF, meanwhile were sent to Kashmir in addition to the 1,200 already sent on 9 July to aid the state's police. On 15 July, curfew was imposed in all districts of Kashmir and mobile phone networks were suspended. Also on the same day, the separatists extended the call for shutdown till 18 July. Reopening of schools and colleges in Kashmir was postponed due to the unrest. The government announced on the same day that it was sending 2,000 additional CRPF personnel to Kashmir. The law and order situation in the valley had started to improve by 24 July. In view of this, curfew was lifted from 4 districts and parts of Srinagar city, with Section 144 of Code of Criminal Procedure still remaining in force. By 26 July, it was lifted from all areas of the region except Anantnag. Protests erupted in many areas after the lifting of the curfew, which was reimposed a day later in Kulgam district, Anantnag and some parts of Srinagar in view of the march called by separatists. It was later reimposed in Pulwama district and Shopian district as well. On 29 July, violent clashes broke out in several places, with over 130 people reported injured. 70 incidents of stone pelting were reported, including attacks on army camps. During the protests, a government building in Rafiabad and an animal husbandry office in Shopian were set on fire, and a grenade lobbed in Shopian. On 30 July, the cavalcade of State Education Minister Naeem Akhtar, who was traveling with MLC Yashar Reshi, was pelted with stones by crowds who were later dispersed at Dangerpura and Shilwat. August. On 1 August in Srinagar, protesters attacked State Education Minister Naeem Akhtar's residence with petrol bombs. Akhtar and his family were not present at the time. The cavalcade of Law and Rural Development Minister Abdul Haq was attacked with stones by protesters in Tangdar area managed to escape the attack unhurt. A mob attacked the vehicle of the Additional Deputy Commissioner, ADC, of Ramban with stones and set it ablaze on the national highway near Leithpura. 2 protesters were killed in defense by a personal security officer of the ADC who was rescued by the CRPF. The shutdown was repeatedly extended by separatists into September. The unrest also started spreading to the Chenab Valley region of Jammu Division in August, with shutdowns being observed in many towns. Protests against civilian casualties were held in Doda with people shouting pro-freedom slogans. On 5th of August, curfew was imposed in several places in view of the march called by separatists who were arrested. 3 people were killed and 674 injured during violent clashes that erupted after Friday prayers. The separatists asked Kashmiris to observe a Black Day on 15th of August. On 11th of August, curfew was extended in several parts of Kashmir the next day in view of the call given by separatists to people for marching to the Aja on 13th and 14th of August. The next day after Friday prayers, violent protests erupted in several cities, during which hundreds of people were injured. Protests after Friday prayers also took place in Doda against the civilian deaths in Kashmir. Many were injured in the clashes that broke out, with police and protesters blaming each other. The Sirat Committee called for a 3-day shutdown against alleged police action. Most parts of Kashmir were placed under curfew on 13th of August in view of the weekend protests called by separatists. On Pakistan's Independence Day, flags of Pakistan were hoisted at many places across Kashmir and pro-Pakistan rallies were carried out, with dozens of people reported injured when security personnel tried to disperse them. Separatist leader Asiya Andrabi was injured along with many other protesters while leading a women-only rally in Tro when security personnel lobbed tear gas shells to disperse them. On 16th of August, 5 protesters were killed due to firing by security personnel and clashes with security forces and protesters blaming each other. On 17th of August, a march called by the separatists to the office of Unmojib, in Srinagar, was stopped by security forces. On the same day, the house of the MLA of Shopian, Muhammad Yusuf Bhatt, was attacked by a mob. On 21st of August, a youth was killed after being hit by a tear gas shell in Srinagar while over 70 people were injured in protests across the region, including about 60 people in a village of Rafiabad Tehsil. Pro-freedom rallies were held at Anantnag, Shopian, and Pulwama, with 40,000 people attending a rally in a Shopian village addressed by separatists including Giolani. The Border Security Force, BSF, was removed from counterinsurgency operations and deployed to maintain law and order in Srinagar for the first time in 12 years on 22nd of August. On 23rd of August, 2 special police officers in Sapri resigned from their posts after their houses were attacked by mobs. On 24th of August, a youth died after receiving injuries in a clash with the security forces while 9 policemen were reportedly injured on the same day when a grenade was lobbed at them from a crowd of protesters in Pulwama. Curfew was lifted from all parts of Kashmir on 31st of August. 1 person was killed while over 100 were injured in clashes during the day. A police quarters and house of Rajya Sabha member of PDP, Nazir Ahmadlaway, were set on fire by protesters in Hanad Chawalgam of Kulgam district. September. Curfew was reimposed in most places of the region on 2nd of September including Srinagar, Bajam, Ganderbal, Bandipora, and Handwara. The next day, curfew was lifted from most parts. It had been reimposed a day earlier, with only some areas of Srinagar remaining under curfew. Meanwhile, a youth was killed in clashes between protesters and security forces in Kazigand. Over 600 people were reported to have been injured during clashes on 4th of September, with the office of Deputy Commissioner in Shopian being set on fire. On 5th of September, a youth who had been wounded a day earlier in the protests succumbed to his injuries in Sapri. In addition, over 120 people were injured during the day as security forces tried to foil pro-freedom rallies. In Zangalpura village of Kulgam, protesters set a policeman's house on fire. The shutdown was repeatedly extended by the separatists into October. On 15th of September, the shutdown was extended till 22nd of September. On 16th of September, a protester who had been injured on 9th of September succumbed to his death while over 50 people were injured in clashes during the day, including 15 in Dora village and 20 in Sapri. On 7th of September, over 250 protesters were injured in clashes with security forces. A Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalaya school in Kulgam caught fire after tear gas shells lobbed by security forces landed inside the school's compound. Meanwhile, a rest house in Chawalgam village of Kulgam was set on fire after protesters hurled petrol bombs at it. Curfew and restrictions on assembly of people were lifted from all parts of the region on the same day, however were reimposed in most parts of Srinagar on 9th of September. It was however lifted again the very next day. 2 protesters were killed on 10th of September in clashes. Curfew was reimposed on 13th of September across the entire region in view of the call given by separatists for a march to the UN offices in Kashmir, while helicopters and drones were deployed to keep a watch on the situation. This was the first time in 26 years that curfew had been imposed in the region during Eid al-Adha. Eid congregations were also barred from being held at the Aja and Hazratbal shrine. 2 protesters were also killed in clashes with security forces on the same day. On 17th of September, the body of an 11-year-old boy, who went missing in protests on the previous day in Harwan, was found near a stream at Dakigam National Park and had been hit by pellets. Protests erupted in Harwan and other areas after the news of his death spread, with several people being injured. On 19th of September, curfew was lifted from all areas except some parts of Srinagar in view of the improving situation. A 19-year-old girl died of cardiac arrest during clashes between protesters and security forces in Shopian district, while a school in Veal village of the district was burnt under mysterious circumstances. The police blamed the protesters for setting it on fire. However, locals denied the accusation. Another school in Anantnag district was also burnt under mysterious circumstances. Curfew was lifted from all parts of Kashmir on 25th of September, while the separatists also declared a temporary relaxation in the shutdown. Curfew was reimposed in Kishtwar after clashes erupted due to arrests of 3 youths for disturbing law and order. It was lifted 2 days later, with night curfew remaining in place. Operation Calm Down was launched by the Indian Army to restore normalcy and connectivity to regions that had been affected the most, especially in South Kashmir. The additional 4,000 troops deployed were ordered to use minimal force in carrying out their duties. Tasks involved ensuring schools opened and were secure. November. On 16th of November, separatists announced a full-day relaxation for 2 days on 19 and 20th of November. This is the first such relaxation to occur since the beginning of the unrest. December. The separatists increased the full-day relaxation to 5 days on 14th of December, calling for shutdown on 2 days. They also stated on 16th of December that they will come up with an annual protest program soon. 2017. February. The separatists called off their strikes in mid-February, including the one scheduled for 24th of February as it coincided with the Shivaratri festival celebrated by the Hindu community. March. On 28th of March, in a clash between security forces and protesters during an operation against a militant in Chadora, 3 civilians were killed and at least 20 others, including the army personnel and police, were injured. Indian security forces launched Operation All Out. Operation All Out is a joint offensive launched by Indian security forces, Indian Army, CRPF, Jammu and Kashmir Police, BSF and IB, to flush out militants and terrorists in Kashmir until there is complete peace in the state. The offensive is against militants and terrorists from terrorist organizations such as Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed, Hizbullah and al-Badr. Operation All Out has so far resulted in the deaths of over 190 terrorists, 110 infiltrators and 80 locals. April. A by-election for the Srinagar Lok Sabha seat was held, as the previous MP of the constituency, Tariq Hamid Kara of PDP had resigned from the party in Parliament in September 2016, accusing the PDP of surrendering its ideals for power, for its handling of the situation in Kashmir. The separatists called for a boycott of the election, and on 9th of April, when the polls for by-election were conducted, violence broke out in the region leading to 8 civilian deaths and over 170 injuries. The voter turnout was recorded to be 7%, which is lowest ever in the past 3 decades.